In the summer of 1988, I received my first serious introduction to Alexander Hamilton when I was contacted by the late Robert Hendrickson, one of many Hamilton biographers and a true Hamilton enthusiast. We went on to become good friends. Robert had contacted me because he was made aware of my involvement in Lower Manhattan, and 1988 was the anniversary of the famous parade in Hamilton's honor on Lower Broadway in July 1788, and that the following year, 1989, would be the 200th anniversary of Hamilton becoming our first Secretary of the Treasury. As a result, I assisted Robert Hendrickson in displaying at Bowling Green the replica of the good ship Hamilton, the float that was the focal point of the parade back in July 1788 and was then displayed at Bowling Green. What also happened that finally, after having passed Trinity Churchyard time after time since I first arrived in Lower Manhattan in the early 1980s, in the summer of 1988, I finally visited Hamilton's grave, and I was shocked by how neglected it was by Trinity Church. Hamilton's grave, which was largely ignored, was surrounded by a growth of unkept weeds, but far worse, the monument atop Hamilton's grave was covered with grime and green mold. I did the obvious and immediately contacted the rector of Trinity Church, expecting he would do something about this. Wrong. Nothing happened until I contacted the New York Post and convinced them to publish an article about the deplorable condition of Hamilton's grave. That worked. Soon after, there was a noticeable improvement. But it took me 2 decades more of lobbying Trinity until they finally did what was truly needed: a complete restoration of the Hamilton monument in Trinity Churchyard. As a result of discovering Hamilton's gravesite, and with 1989 being the 200th anniversary of Hamilton becoming the first Secretary of the Treasury, I recruited John Herzog to the Hamilton cause. John and I had become friendly right after I moved into 26 Broadway in 1987, where John headquartered his company, Herzog Hein Geduld. We both shared a passion for American history and Bowling Green. As a result, beginning for the first time on July 12, 1989, John and I agreed to begin honoring Alexander Hamilton in Trinity Churchyard twice a year, on July 12th, the anniversary of his death in 1804, and on January 11, the anniversary of Hamilton's birth on Nevis in 1757. This was before the museum was even an idea, and John personally donated the wreaths, and I organized ceremonies at Hamilton's grave on behalf of the Bowling Green Association. The tradition remains unbroken 30 years later, twice a year, at Hamilton's grave in Trinity Churchyard. A major new development in this tradition took place over 2 decades later, on January 11th, 2012, when a remarkable individual introduced himself to me at our ceremonies that day. Scholet, who immediately impressed me with his plans for a new organization, the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society. And Rand and I have been in constant contact ever since. And 2 years later, after the Bowling Green Association hosting the twice-yearly Hamilton tributes in Trinity Churchyard for 25 years, Rand and the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society now host these events, and they have done a very impressive job twice each year at Hamilton's grave and in so many other ways and at places all over our nation. So this video is my tribute to Rand on the occasion of Rand relinquishing the presidency of that organization he founded, and in honor of his first of what I hope will be many presentations at St. Paul's Chapel, which Hamilton knew so well during his lifetime and gave one of his finest speeches on July 4th, 1789. As for Rand, he remains the most knowledgeable and passionate advocate for Alexander Hamilton I and so many others have ever known.
So these various people were questioning why I felt that Alexander Hamilton was so significant. If no one else, in history books and educated, no one's hearing about him, how could it be true that I feel so strongly about this? And it got to a point where it was a bit frustrating. I was trying to find a way to do it. I couldn't figure a way to do it. I couldn't figure a way. So then I hear the news. The Hamilton Grange, Hamilton's home, has been relocated, restored, and they're going to open it September 17th. I'm like, wow, of 2011. And so I'm like, oh, good, I have so many questions, and I know that all the people who care about Hamilton and all the smart, knowledgeable people, and they're all going to be there, and I'm going to go pick their brains and create a relationship and resolve some of these things that weren't resolved in my thinking. And so I came up, all of a sudden an idea came to me. At IBM, when we were doing consulting, they had a special program at the Palisades in New Jersey about how to deal with difficult clients. And so I said, well, this is a difficult engagement. Let me see if I can go through this methodology, this approach. 57 minutes later, 4:57 in the morning of October 8th, 2011, boom. Everything came into focus. All these things I had, I got the first statement. Alexander Hamilton was George Washington's indispensable partner in war and peace for over 22 years. Okay, so that was a statement that would be impressive to people. And then I had all the evidence behind every word. What he did during the war, what he did during the peace, how he was indispensable to Washington. And then I said, well, look at all the things that Hamilton did for the foundations that we live with today. So then I came up with the statement that Alexander Hamilton created the vision and foundations upon which the United States of America achieved greatness. And I had the proof behind that. So for the next 5 days through October 12th, I wrote, composed, and consolidated. I worked 20 to 23 hours per day, full of energy, and so many things came. I did a 25-year plan. I said I got to visit all the sites. We've got to work on getting 1757 back as the respected date of Hamilton's birth. We had to form a society. We had to make sure that information got accurate in textbooks that fed articles in newspapers, etc. And to talk about this. Also an idea for a movie, idea for books. So that was put in place, and the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society was founded on October 11th. So that was the fourth day in when I knew we had to have an organization. And I decided to come up to New York City for Hamilton's birthday on January 11th. And in preparation for that, I had met Janie Gwill and Bill Crystal, who were early dedicated to the scholarship about Hamilton, just really precious people. So I went to him and I said, I'm going up there. Are there any activities going on up at Trinity, where he's buried here in Lower Manhattan? And Janie said, well, there's a guy I met up there. He seems to be on top of things, and Arthur Piccolo. And so she gave me his email, and it was just a few days before, a day before, 2 days before, and I sent a note up to Arthur Piccolo, and I said, is there something going on? He said, I'll be there, and we'll have a ceremony to honor him. And I found out later that Arthur has been holding the flame for a couple of decades in doing that. So I show up, it was a gray, cool day. Of course, it's January 11th, and I saw him in a gray trench coat over in the corner, and I said, maybe that's him. I went over, and sure enough, it was. It was great that we did connect. And then we were, sizing each other up, what we knew. And when I met up with Arthur, he said, I'll know if you know Hamilton. What was the most important day in Alexander Hamilton's life? So I was thinking about a number of things. And then when he shared the date, I said, Arthur, come over here to my daughter who's on the bench. I said, Nicole, what is the most important day that I talk about in our presentation? And she said, September 11th, 1789, the exact same day that we see the inflection when the whole nation moved in a new direction. Arthur had that similar understanding. So we both knew that we had the truth about Hamilton, understanding that his influence, his effect, and on. And so Arthur was just incredible. In fact, he's someone who's linked us up that are coming along the way to grow a critical mass of people. So Arthur got on the phone and with another person really dedicated to the life and legacy of Alexander Hamilton. That was John Herzog, the founder and chairman of the Museum of American Finance, just a block or two away from where Hamilton is buried. So he left a voice message for John Herzog. I went to see if he was at the museum. He wasn't. I left information at the desk and went on their way. That was January 11th, 2012.